Good morning, everybody. It's Cass and Court TV coming to you. It is Tuesday morning here in Los Angeles. What a beautiful, beautiful morning it is. And I know that it is the afternoon and they're on the East Coast and closely in the afternoon they're on in Central. So good day to everybody from across the country. I appreciate y'all tuning in to me today. Listen here, we have a lot of busyness, a lot of news to get through today. But one thing I want to get through right now is the alternate juror number 6, alt juror number 6, which is different than the dismissed juror number 6. Okay, so this is the alternate juror from the infamous Diddy trial. Now, the infamous trial, now it is. Who you may have seen talking on CNN. He's been on across the land talking about his experience as an alternate juror. By the way, he was an alt, so he actually did no deliberating. He was just someone who was there as an alt in case, somebody got sick, passed out, had a stroke, whatever it is. So he's not someone that actually deliberated or did any of that stuff, right? So he has very little insight into the deliberation process. But of course, as a juror, he's been lending himself out to everybody to sort of, give his perspective as a juror. Now, some interesting news from the inner city press. I listened to my guy, shout out to Matthew Russell, this morning. He is covering the Diddy hearing slated for later on this afternoon, 2 p.m. East Coast. He has spotted Mark Agnifilio, so he will be there, or Diddy's attorneys will be there in person, as I predicted rightly. Likely the prosecution will be there as well, but Diddy will be via virtual, via Zoom, Scope, whatever it is, from the Men's Detention Center there in Brooklyn. He will not be brought down for this. And then folks who want to actually watch the proceeding can do so there in the courthouse in a actually separate room. So the judge and all of those folks will be on the 24th floor, and then they will teleconference the hearing for Combs, and then folks who want to watch it Zoom wise can be on a lower floor in the courthouse for public viewing. That's how I understand it to be happening, but it could be happening slightly different. But I do know for sure Combs will not be there, and I am almost like in person, and I am certain that Mark Agnifilio and the rest of the Dream Team will be there in person, since they've already been spotted. Now, I'm going to Inner City Press because Inner City Press covered this juror thing. Okay, so there's some news with this. Here's what's happening. The juror, according to Matthew Russell, the juror actually, he feels that the juror was dishonest about so that he could get on the jury. Okay, this is the alternate juror again, George. He's calling himself. He's going around talking to CNN's Laura Coates, talking to whomever will stop and talk to him, whether it's Laura Coates or someone else. Okay, he will talk to anyone at this point, because what the Inner City Press is thinking is that he talked his way onto the jury. First of all, he was asked multiple times in multiple interviews during the voir dire process, which is jury selection process. Did he ever come in contact with law enforcement on his job? You see, juror number 6, or alternate juror number 6, George, he works for the United Nations. And one of the things that Matthew Russell says is that he understands and knows the particular department that this juror works in, and that they are constantly in contact with law enforcement, which I would also gather to be the truth as well, because the United Nations is a government entity. They are not law enforcement, but because of the kind of business that they do, they come in contact with law enforcement. That's just like anyone who works in a state agency, national, a government federal agency, or even as it relates to local municipalities. Of course, you're going to come into contact with law enforcement on your level. So it wouldn't surprise me. So I guess this also sort of like, piqued the interest of the judge or the attorneys or whomever during the voir dire process. So after his initial interview with legal counsel about his status, employment status with the United Nations, they asked him again. They asked him twice, Matthew. According to Inner City Press's Matthew Russell, he was asked twice about whether or not he came into contact with law enforcement at his job at the United Nations. And again, he was not truthful. So Matthew Russell says that no, they definitely do come into contact. Matthew Russell, he is the lead journalist over there at the Inner City Press. He covered the Diddy trial from beginning to end, or beginning to now, okay? And he covers all the big trials over there, including the trials surrounding the UN, the United Nations, and all these other trials. He's covering the Drake Universal trial. He's also covering the Tekashi 6ix9ine trial. So he is there at that courthouse at the Southern District of New York quite a lot, and he knows that in that particular division, wherever this alternate juror number 6 works, come in contact with law enforcement. Why is that important? That's important because his contact with law enforcement could have disqualified him from actually being on the jury. And the fact that he was on the jury, though he did not deliberate, it still means that there's some, influence as it relates to him being on the jury. He could have, deliberated if he was given an opportunity to deliberate. He could have deliberated in one way or the other based on his relationships with folks in the UN office and his contact with law enforcement while at his job at the UN. Now, you're saying, well, it doesn't really matter, because you're crying over spilled milk. Well, number one, I'm not crying. But number two, doesn't matter. That is the reason why these juries, and I told you guys this in a few episodes, on the early episodes when we were talking about the dismissed juror number 6, in probably episode 3 or 4. I told you guys how important this jury situation is as it relates to these big high stakes trials. Now, Sean Combs, he was acquitted of the more serious charges, but he was not acquitted on the lower tier charges, the prostitution transportation charges. Now, if this juror was actually part of the deliberation process based on the misconduct, Sean Combs would have reason to appeal the conviction, because this juror really lied in order to get on the jury. Now, based upon his behavior now, because he's going around doing all these interviews and doing this, that, and the third, he probably lied to get on the jury to monetize his juror experience. Write a book, do interviews, get on talk shows, publicity, whatever. He's done TMZ and CNN already. I know that for sure. And I think he's done some other little shows as well. But this is really troubling. Now, he didn't deliberate, so there's no way that, the Combs team could use him specifically as a reason to actually, appeal the 2 lower tier convictions. But this is why this is a problem. This is why juror number 6 was dismissed, because he was not being honest about where he lived. It's not really about what the folks are lying about. It's really about the fact that they're not being honest just in general. You can't do that. You can't have people like that on juries, because if those kinds of people are on the jury, you can't then guarantee that they're in those deliberation rooms actually deliberating in the way in which the government says that they have to, reading those jury instructions, etc., etc., etc. There were many problems with this trial, especially as it relates to the secrecy of the trial, or the privacy of the trial, and making sure that it upheld its integrity. And I know that Judge Submaranian did his best to do that, but it really, for instance, I believe it is Sean Combs' friend, Charlucci, who was wearing free puff shirts to court every day. That's a problem. Normally, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to wear shirts or any sort of clothing. Actually, I believe the marshals actually made a couple of people in the Combs family turn their shirts inside out at one point. And it could have been him, Charlucci, um, and I believe one of the kids too, the Combs kids. But one day in court, I was told from one of the YouTube creators that was actually there in court that day, they had the free puff shirt on and didn't make him turn it inside out. That, he just had it on. I believe it was Christian who had this shirt on. So these are things that aren't allowed in the courtroom, because these are the things that could actually influence a jury. These are the things you're not allowed to do. I said on my live the other day about the fact, Combs was being squirrely in the courtroom, making gestures, making faces at the jury, whether it was smiling or not or whatever. But the defendant is not allowed to do that, because the defendant cannot try to influence that jury. Maybe he wasn't trying to do that, but because of his status and because of who he is, and nodding and smiling and this, that, and the third, all of those things can potentially influence a jury. So there was a lot of issues in this trial as it relates to people staying on their best behavior. That kind of didn't happen, but I thought it was interesting that Matthew Russell brought up this point this morning about this juror, alt juror number 6 situation. He actually didn't deliberate again, but this is the guy you've been seeing on CNN, really sort of like, trying to monetize the fact that he was an alt juror on this jury. I mean, to me, if you can't get any of the other jurors because they won't talk, then yeah, I guess his interview is as good as it can get, because it's better than nothing. But in the greater scheme of things, as it relates to an actual juror who deliberated and a juror who was an alt waiting in the wings to be called up to bat, this guy is insignificant. Okay? So I really just think that it's just a shame. I really hope that the federal government in the future, as it relates to these cases, really sort of think about and consider sequestering for these bigger cases. This is the kind of case, the Combs case is the kind of case that requires sequester, okay? Just like the O.J. Simpson case 30, 40 something years ago, not 40 quite, but 30 something years ago. That case was a state case, and we sequester at the state level, and that is the reason it was sequestered. It was a sequesterable case because you had this huge star, and just like in the Sean Combs trial, it's the same thing. Now, the juror that they did speak to, one of the women, I think it was a woman that deliberated, she said she was asked a question by the journalist, and it was a fair question, that was their decision based upon, influence from Combs's status as a star, as a, mogul, et cetera, all the things that he is. And she said that the question was highly insulting, and that they would have come up with the same outcome had they, been deliberating for a person who was not of that status, a normal, everyday citizen. I don't know about that, but I wasn't in the jury room. I have been through, if I haven't been through 100 voir dires, I've been through one. Okay, I've been through a lot of voir dires, so I kind of know this sort of thing. But I've never been in the deliberation room because it's a very sort of secured space. So I don't know exactly, can't give preview into like they did or they didn't or whatever. All we can do is take her at her word and go on with it. But I will say this, they did not have that case long enough, in my opinion. They deliberated for 16 hours only. Now, I said in an early live that way earlier that, hey, whatever the outcome is, let's not insult the jury. So I'm not trying to insult the jury, but I am sort of making some fair points about the fact that their deliberations seemed rushed. They deliberated for 16 hours, especially after being presented with a 100-page jury instruction. So they did have a few questions, and that's always good. But it was just very interesting to me, especially after, saying, hey, we can't come up with a plausible decision on count one, and counts 2 and 4, or I think that's what it was, counts 1, 2, and 4, but like, the next, what is it, they did that on a Thursday or something, Friday or whatever, and by Monday they had come up with their decision. and they weren't in that deliberation room on Monday more than what, 45 minutes, and they came up with a a verdict. And so all you can do is trust the jury. But now we're seeing, you know, some of the fallout of the jury. We're seeing how some people are coming out. This alt is coming out, and now we're seeing what his real intentions were and why he lied, it seems, to get on the jury. Sad times, guys. I don't know what to say on it, but I wanted to let you guys know about it. Please give me your opinion, your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for joining Cast in Court TV this morning with your girl, Miss Public Info. I'll be back with it live talking about this new sentencing conference hearing that Diddy will be in this afternoon about 2 o'clock Eastern. His attorneys are already there. They've been spotted. He's going to be joining via teleconference. Members of the public, media will be downstairs below the 24th floor where the hearing is actually taking place. They will be downstairs, you know, looking at the whole thing go down in a separate room for those of you who might be in New York and want to join. So I'll see you guys then. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll talk soon. All right.